Imagine for a second that you are, trying to scale your business. You invest in all the latest marketing tech. You set up this brilliantly designed automated campaign, and you hit send.
Right, and you think you're being incredibly efficient.
Exactly. You're saving time, you're reaching thousands of people, and honestly, you're feeling pretty good about your operations. But, and here's the kicker, instead of generating leads, you've just accidentally stepped on a $3 million legal landmine.
Which is, it's the ultimate nightmare scenario for any modern business owner. It's whether you're running a local real estate agency or, a massive tech startup.
Yeah.
You think you're optimizing your outreach or your workforce, but without realizing it, you're actually just automating your own liability.
So today's deep dive is pulling together this really massive, fascinating stack of sources. We're talking dense class action defense briefings, commercial real estate market analysis, and local video marketing roadmaps.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It is, but our mission today is to connect the dots and show you exactly where these invisible legal landmines are hidden. We're going to explore how this modern quest for business efficiency, like automating sales, tracking web users, squeezing labor costs, is creating billion-dollar legal blind spots.
And more importantly, we're going to look at how the smartest companies are pivoting away from these dangerous tactics toward a completely different, legally safe strategy.
Because whether you are a real estate agent, an HR director, or a tech founder, the rules of engagement have fundamentally changed.
They really have. What was considered like a genius growth hack 5 years ago is now grounds for a devastating class action lawsuit.
Right. So let's start right on the front lines of this efficiency obsession, which is outbound marketing. There's this cautionary tale in our sources, a case called Garvey v. Gaitan, and it just perfectly illustrates how dangerous automation has become.
Oh, the Garvey case. Yeah, this one is wild.
It really is. So we have this Las Vegas realtor who used a popular platform called Go High Level. She basically scraped contact info for expired home listings off the multiple listing service, the MLS, and sent out thousands of what are called ringless voicemails.
And for anyone who hasn't encountered one, a ringless voicemail or an RVM is this piece of tech that bypasses the normal cellular network switching.
It just drops right in.
Exactly. It drops a pre-recorded audio message directly into a person's voicemail server without their phone ever actually ringing. From a marketing perspective, it feels like a magic trick, right?
Yeah, you get to leave a personalized sounding message for thousands of people without ever having to actually speak to them or, risk them hanging up on you.
But the courts do not see it as a magic trick.
No, they don't. It's kind of like slipping a flyer under someone's door and claiming you didn't trespass because you didn't knock. But under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, or the TCPA, the court certified a class action of 983 people. That represented almost 2,000 calls.
And because this realtor had zero documentation of prior consent, she's now facing up to $2.97 million in damages.
Wait, almost $3 million? Just for voicemails?
Yeah, because she fell hook, line, and sinker for what EcoSP Realty calls the MLS myth.
Right, this completely false belief that just because a homeowner puts their phone number on a public property listing, they're somehow consenting to automated telemarketing.
Which they absolutely are not. And we actually have to talk about the weirdest coincidence in our research regarding this specific case.
Oh, the name thing.
Yes, the name attached to it. Garvey, it carries this bizarre historical baggage. It's almost like a glitch in the legal matrix.
I was reading this and I couldn't believe it.
Right. For over 40 years, whenever a case with the name Garvey hits the courts, it ends up setting these incredibly strict, unforgiving rules for how things must be done. Like back in 1985, Garvey v. State strictly defined the rigid boundaries of legal representation under the Georgia Constitution.
And then there was the baseball one.
Yes. Fast forward to 2001, MLBPA v. Garvey goes all the way to the Supreme Court and defines the absolute unbreakable finality of labor arbitration involving Steve Garvey.
And the sources mentioned there are federal tax cases, habeas corpus cases, all under the name Garvey, all strictly enforcing procedural boundaries.
And now, here in 2026, we have Wayne Garvey defining the strict boundaries of consumer privacy. The historical through line is always the same. If you fail to respect strict procedural boundaries, the legal system will bring the hammer down on you.
Okay, but wait, hold on a second. I'm looking at these recent rulings in our notes, specifically from the Fifth Circuit and a federal court in Maryland, and they seem to, contradict this entirely.
You're talking about Bradford and the dental plans case.
Yeah, Bradford v. Sovereign Pest Control and Bradley v. dentalplans.com. Didn't those courts just rule that the FCC actually overstepped its authority? Like they said that written consent isn't strictly required by the law for these pre-recorded calls?
That is a crucial development, yes. Those courts basically looked at the plain text of the TCPA and noted that the law demands prior express consent. It does not explicitly demand prior express written consent.
So the FCC just kind of added the written part?
Essentially, yeah. The judges ruled that the FCC didn't have the authority to just invent a written requirement out of thin air. So in certain jurisdictions now, like Texas or Louisiana, a business might actually be able to defend itself by proving they had oral consent to make the call.
Wow, so the law is just completely fracturing depending on where you live.
It is turning into a massive patchwork.
Yeah.
But if you look at the compliance guide put out by eXp Realty, they highlight the ultimate takeaway. Their 2026 mantra is literally no consent, no automation.
Because even if oral consent might save you in one specific courtroom, having zero consent is still universally illegal everywhere.
Exactly. If you're blasting out thousands of automated messages relying on a fragmented, unpredictable legal landscape to protect you is just reckless.
Which brings us to, I guess, the next logical step for a lot of businesses. Because if automating your outbound calls is a legal minefield, companies just pivot to inbound data collection.
Right. They think, well, fine, I won't call them. I'll just quietly track them when they visit my website.
Welcome to the invisible data war.
And this is where we're seeing an absolute explosion of ad tech class actions. Plaintiffs are aggressively suing companies for using incredibly common tools like the Metapixel or Google Analytics.
Which almost every business uses.
Exactly. And they're claiming that these hidden tracking tools violate laws like the Video Privacy Protection Act, the VPCA, or the California Invasion of Privacy Act.
So the argument is essentially that by having a pixel on your site, you're wiretapping your own customers and illegally sharing their behavior with third parties like Facebook.
That's the argument. And if you run a website right now and you've got a tracking pixel installed, to measure your ads, you're probably sweating listening to this.
For sure. But the courts are starting to draw a very interesting line here that might actually save you. In two major cases from our Stack Cold Quest Diagnostics and Golden v. NBC Universal, the defense actually won.
Yes, and they won based on what's called the ordinary person standard.
Which is fascinating. Can you break down the underlying logic there?
Yeah, it's essential to understand. In the Golden case, the plaintiff argued that by simply watching a video on a media website, her video watching history was intercepted and sent to Meta via a tracking pixel. But the actual data packet that was transmitted was just an encrypted URL.
Okay, so to make sure I'm translating this correctly, what the courts are saying is that using a tracking pixel is basically like mailing a locked safe.
I love that analogy.
Right. So if the mail carrier, or in this case, an ordinary person looking at the raw data, can't open it and read the personally identifiable information inside, it's not legally a privacy violation.
That is a perfect analogy. The court explicitly stated that personally identifiable information, or PII, under these privacy laws, only encompasses data that an ordinary person could easily use to identify you and your habits.
So not just a random string of code.
Right. It does not cover a string of encrypted data that only a highly sophisticated tech giant with proprietary algorithms can decode. Because the transmission couldn't be appreciated or decoded by an average person, the court ruled it didn't legally qualify as eavesdropping or unauthorized disclosure.
Okay, but data privacy isn't just about what tracking pixels do behind the scenes. What happens when a company actually loses your data in a cyber attack?
The data breaches.
Yeah, we looked at Doherty v. Bojangles, where former employees sued the restaurant chain because their personal info might be floating around the dark web after a data breach.
And the court dismissed that case. The reason why is a huge relief for businesses. The judge relied on a Supreme Court standard from a case called TransUnion that basically says you can't sue a company just because you're scared something bad might happen in the future.
You need actual proof.
Exactly. You need to show the court a real, actual, concrete injury to get your foot in the courtroom door. You can't just say, my data's out there, I might get scammed.
You have to show actual fraudulent charges on your bank statement that are directly traceable to that specific breach.
Precisely. And because federal courts are getting so strict about requiring the actual concrete harm, clever lawyers are completely changing their tactics.
Right. They're trying to keep these massive cases in state courts instead.
Yeah, look at the National General Holdings case. The state of New York strategically sued an all-state unit over a massive data breach using only state laws. They actively avoided bringing any federal claims so the case couldn't be bumped up to a federal judge.
It's just a total jurisdictional chess game.
It really is. And we see those exact same boundaries being tested in genetic privacy, too.
Oh, right, Henry v. Abvey. This one was under the Illinois Genetic Information Privacy Act, or GIPA.
Right. So the situation was that a nurse verbally asked an employee for his family medical history during a routine pre-employment physical.
But the court threw that out as well, and the reason makes perfect sense to me. The employee could have just said no.
Exactly.
It wasn't a strict condition of employment to answer that specific question about his family history, even if taking the physical itself was mandatory to get the job.
The mechanism of causality is what matters to the judge here. The employer didn't mandate the disclosure of genetic information to get the job. The employee had a choice, so the privacy law wasn't violated.
Okay, so let's take stock for a second. Automating your outward marketing is a massive financial risk.
Yep.
Secretly tracking your web visitors or storing their data is a jurisdictional minefield.
Definitely.
So what do business owners do when they still need to, increase their margins? They look inward. They try to squeeze more efficiency out of their own team.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the labor landscape is just as explosive as the marketing landscape.
It is a minefield of wage, hour, and equity class actions. Let's break down the massive gender pay discrimination suit against Bloomberg.
Yeah, so the plaintiffs brought in a labor economist, Dr. Newmark, to prove that there was systemic pay disparity across the company. But his analysis fundamentally failed in court.
And the reasons why it failed are just fascinating. First, his statistics were incredibly weak. He only found a 1.6 standard deviation in pay differences.
Right, which in statistical terms, that isn't enough to prove a definitive pattern. It could just be random noise.
But the bigger issue was that he used an accounting category called the cost center as a primary variable to explain the pay differences.
Which is a huge mistake. Using a cost center to analyze human behavior is a fatal methodological flaw.
Because a cost center is just a bucket for organizational accounting, right?
Exactly. It's how a company tracks budgets for things like office supplies or software licenses. It has absolutely nothing to do with what an employee actually does all day or how their compensation is decided.
Plus, the plaintiffs tried to pin the blame on a single decision maker at the very top of Bloomberg.
But the court recognized reality there. Hundreds of different local managers across the company actually made those individual pay decisions. You cannot claim there is a class-wide common policy of discrimination if the discretion to set salaries is highly decentralized among hundreds of different people.
We see that same need for precision when it comes to wage and hour exemptions, too, like in Castillo v. Albert Einstein College of Medicine.
Yes, where a group of research coordinators tried to form a class action claiming they were all illegally denied overtime pay.
But the court denied their attempt to group up using what they call a modest plus standard.
The college defended itself brilliantly there. They showed they had 49 distinct job descriptions for these coordinators. Some of them just collected basic data, but others made high-level medical recommendations.
So because their actual daily duties were so wildly different, they fit the learned professional exemption.
Exactly. They couldn't be lumped into one giant homogeneous class. That level of granular record-keeping saved them.
But the moment you cross state lines, the logic of labor law completely flips.
It's dizzying. In Illinois, the state Supreme Court ruled in the Johnson v. Amazon case that pre-shift COVID-19 health screenings are compensable time. Amazon literally has to pay their workers for the time spent waiting in line to get their temperature checked.
Which is absolute whiplash. Because under the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act, the FLSA, those exact same pre-shift health screenings are considered preliminary activities, and employers don't have to pay a dime for them.
The contrast is stark.
You have federal courts protecting pizza franchisees from out-of-state claims, like the Schamberg v. Ivaz pizza case, where a Virginia judge sliced away claims from out-of-state delivery drivers just to protect the legal concept of due process.
Right.
But then you have state courts telling Amazon they have to pay for 10-minute health screenings. Trying to legally optimize a workforce right now seems like you're just begging for a lawsuit.
Oh, and the liability can get incredibly personal, too. Look at the quality therapy case in Illinois. The state literally tried to hold the corporate officers personally liable, like going after their own bank accounts for unpaid wages after their business collapsed.
Wait, really? Their personal bank accounts?
Yeah, but the court looked at the mechanics of what happened. The company's bank froze their credit line. The officers didn't knowingly permit the underpayment. They literally couldn't access the money to make payroll.
Wow.
So because of that physical impossibility, they were spared personal liability. But we're also seeing rising trends in ERISA class actions, like over 401k forfeitures and ESG investing.
And isn't there a looming Supreme Court showdown, too?
Yes, Flower Foods v. Brock. That's over whether local last-mile delivery drivers are exempt from arbitration under the Federal Arbitration Act. It's a massive deal.
So if we synthesize all this labor litigation, a very clear pattern emerges. The courts are ruthlessly punishing sloppy blanket policies. If you treat your employees as one giant homogeneous block to save time, you will get sued.
Absolutely. But they are actively rewarding companies that put in the work to maintain detailed, highly specific records.
Like Einstein College's 49 distinct job descriptions.
Exactly. So if automating your digital outreach is a legal minefield and trying to squeeze margins out of a massive workforce triggers labor lawsuits, what is left?
Right.
You have to stop chasing volume and start chasing high-value, undeniable trust. You have to prove you are real. And the perfect laboratory for this pivot is happening right now in the physical world, specifically in the massive commercial real estate boom in the South Bay of Los Angeles.
Yes, the South Bay boom. We're talking about San Pedro, the Hawthorne Space Corridor, and El Segundo. This is just fascinating macroeconomics.
It really is.
Los Angeles passed Measure ULA, which acts as a 5.5% transfer tax on property sales over $5 million. It's often called the mansion tax, but it hits commercial properties too.
And what happened? A 40% drop in LA building permits.
Exactly. It caused massive capital flight straight into the neighboring South Bay area.
The demand for space there is staggering. El Segundo currently has an industrial vacancy rate of just 3.4%. You have incredible operations moving in, like Varda Space Industries, who are leasing an old Mattel toy factory.
And they aren't making toys.
No, they are not.
They're literally manufacturing drugs, specifically a drug called ritonavir, Form 3 in microgravity. I mean, that is how hyper-competitive and high-stakes this South Bay market is. When you are a business bidding for contracts against literal space factories, a cold call voicemail isn't going to cut it.
Not at all. You need a completely different strategy to win their trust. Which brings us to the strategy outlined in our sources by Voxel Micro Video Labs. They call it Trojan Horse Networking.
Trojan Horse Networking. I like that.
Right. If you want to win the LA Harbor Department's new waterfront drone show contract, or if you're, say, Fifth Third Bank trying to win public trust for a massive $10.9 billion merger with Comerica, you do not send automated spam.
Because cold calling brings high legal risk and terrible conversion rates.
Exactly. Instead, you invite those key decision makers to a high-end 4K video podcast studio. You interview them. You feature their expertise.
Which completely inverts the power dynamic of traditional sales.
It does.
By acting as a media host, you bypass all the awkward friction of a sales pitch. You aren't begging for 15 minutes of their time to sell them something. You are offering them a premium platform to share their own story.
And that's where this concept of vertical slice comes in. Because from an operational standpoint, nobody has the time to film the same pitch twice.
Right.
Voxel solves what they call format fatigue. Instead of filming a video for YouTube and then holding a phone up to your face to film a completely different video for Instagram, you film once in ultra high resolution horizontal 4K.
And because that 4K resolution is so dense with data, you can simply crop the center of the frame for a vertical TikTok or Instagram reel without losing any visual quality.
You dominate multiple digital platforms from a single high-leverage studio session. You are basically replacing the legal liability of the exhausting content treadmill with a 247 digital asset library.
Which is the essence of the 2026 media roadmap mentioned in the sources.
Exactly. You build undeniable social capital. You create what procurement officers call living capability statements. It's actual video evidence of your expertise and your personality that state agencies and high net worth clients can see and trust.
It is high leverage safety in a dangerous digital world.
Beautifully put.
Okay, so let's recap the journey we've been on today. We started with the harsh reality that the old ways of forcing business efficiency are dead. Blasting automated voicemails without written or at least express consent will ruin you financially.
Yes.
Secretly tracking web users with pixels will drag you into a jurisdictional chess match in federal court. Squeezing your hourly workers over pre-shift screenings will trigger massive state labor violations.
The legal tripwires are absolutely everywhere.
They are. But the solution isn't to shrink or stop growing. The solution is to build digital real estate and undeniable visual authority.
It's about shifting your entire business model from a posture of extraction, like trying to pull data and time out of people, to a posture of attraction.
Which leaves us with one final slightly terrifying thought to mull over. As AI voice generators and deepfakes make it easier and cheaper than ever to spam consumers, the legal system is only going to crack down harder and harder on automation.
Oh, without a doubt.
So are we rapidly approaching a future where sitting down in a physical studio for a real, unscripted video conversation becomes the only legally safe way to prove you are an actual, legitimate human business?
It's a fascinating question. I mean, in a world drowning in automated noise, the ultimate luxury and the ultimate legal defense might just be proving you're real.